Nigeria, a land of immense potential, finds itself shackled by a pervasive enemy: corruption. It is a disease that has eaten deep into the fabric of our society, crippling our progress and stealing the future of our children. The stench of corruption hangs heavy in the air, choking the hopes and aspirations of millions. From the highest echelons of power to the everyday interactions of ordinary citizens, corruption has become a way of life. This cancer of corruption has spread its tentacles into every aspect of our nation. It undermines our institutions, erodes trust in government, and stifles economic growth. It is a betrayal of the dreams of our founding fathers and a threat to the very survival of our nation. The time has come to confront this evil head-on, to expose its roots and work tirelessly to eradicate it. The fight against corruption will not be easy. It will require a collective effort, a national awakening that transcends tribe, religion, and social status. We must stand together as Nigerians, united in our determination to reclaim our nation from the grip of this insidious foe. The cost of inaction is simply too high. We can no longer afford to sit idly by while our nation bleeds. The time for action is now. At the heart of Nigeria's corruption crisis lies a fundamental weakness in our institutions. These institutions, meant to serve as the bedrock of our democracy, have been eroded by decades of neglect, mismanagement, and outright abuse. They have become shadows of their former selves, hollow structures devoid of the strength and integrity to resist the relentless assault of corruption. Our judicial system, once a beacon of hope for the common man, has been compromised by political interference and a lack of independence. Judges are often subject to pressure from powerful individuals and interests, eroding public confidence in the ability of the courts to deliver impartial justice. This lack of faith in the judiciary creates an environment where the corrupt operate with impunity, knowing they are unlikely to face the full force of the law. The police force tasked with upholding law and order is itself riddled with corruption. Extortion, bribery, and abuse of power are commonplace, leaving ordinary citizens feeling vulnerable and unprotected. Instead of being a symbol of safety and security, the police have become a source of fear and mistrust. Without strong and independent institutions, the fight against corruption becomes an uphill battle. We need to rebuild these institutions from the ground up, instilling in them a culture of transparency, accountability, and service to the people. One of the most insidious forms of corruption in Nigeria is the deeply entrenched system of patronage, often referred to as prebendelism. This system operates on the principle of rewarding loyalty and allegiance with positions of power, contracts, and access to public resources. It is a system that prioritizes personal gain over the national interest, creating a vicious cycle of corruption that benefits the few at the expense of the many. Patronage networks permeate all levels of government, from the federal level down to local communities. Politicians use their positions to enrich themselves and their cronies, diverting public funds into private pockets and awarding contracts based on connections rather than merit. This culture of patronage breeds a sense of entitlement among the political elite, who come to view public office as an opportunity for personal enrichment rather than a call to serve the people. The consequences of this system are devastating. Public services crumble as funds intended for healthcare, education, and infrastructure are siphoned off to line the pockets of corrupt officials. Talented individuals are sidelined in favor of those with the right connections, depriving the nation of much-needed expertise and leadership. To break free from the grip of patronage, we need to dismantle the networks that perpetuate it. This requires a fundamental shift in our political culture, one that emphasizes meritocracy, transparency, and accountability. We must move away from a system where loyalty trumps competence, and where public office is seen as a pathway to personal enrichment. A key factor fueling corruption in Nigeria is the lack of accountability for those in positions of power. For too long, political leaders have operated with impunity, their actions rarely subject to scrutiny or consequence. This culture of impunity breeds a sense of entitlement and encourages further acts of corruption. The absence of accountability is evident in the way corruption scandals are often handled. Investigations are often slow, opaque, and easily derailed by political interference. Those accused of wrongdoing, even when overwhelming evidence exists, are rarely held to account. This lack of consequences sends a dangerous message that corruption is acceptable and that those in power are above the law. The Nigerian people have become disillusioned and cynical, their faith in the system shaken by years of unfulfilled promises and blatant disregard for the rule of law. They have witnessed firsthand how corruption has robbed them of their future, diverting resources that could have built schools, hospitals, and roads. To restore trust and deter future corruption, we must establish a system where power is exercised with responsibility and where those who betray the public trust are held accountable for their actions. This requires strengthening our anti-corruption agencies, ensuring the independence of the judiciary, and empowering citizens to hold their leaders accountable. Nigeria's vast oil wealth, instead of being a blessing, has become a curse, fueling corruption and exacerbating existing inequalities. The discovery of oil, rather than ushering in an era of prosperity for all Nigerians, has instead created a culture of greed and dependence, distorting our economy and undermining our national development. The oil sector, which accounts for a significant portion of our national revenue, has been plagued by corruption and mismanagement. Billions of dollars in oil revenue have vanished into thin air, siphoned off by corrupt officials and their cronies. This has left our nation with little to show for its vast oil wealth, except for environmental degradation and a legacy of poverty and underdevelopment. The dependence on oil has also created a rentier economy, where wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few who control access to oil rents, rather than being generated through productive activities. This has led to a neglect of other sectors of the economy, such as agriculture and manufacturing, further hindering our economic diversification and sustainable development. We must break free from the curse of oil and pursue economic diversification that benefits all Nigerians. This requires investing in education, infrastructure, and creating an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. We must move away from our dependence on oil and unleash the full potential of our diverse economy. Elections, the cornerstone of any democracy, have become exercises in futility in Nigeria. Instead of reflecting the will of the people, they are often manipulated and rigged to favor the wealthy and powerful. The votes of ordinary citizens are rendered meaningless, their voices silenced by a system designed to perpetuate the status quo. Electoral malpractice takes many forms, from vote buying and voter intimidation to ballot box snatching and the manipulation of results. Politicians desperate to cling to power resort to these tactics, knowing that the institutions tasked with ensuring free and fair elections are weak and compromised. This culture of impunity surrounding electoral malpractice has far-reaching consequences. It undermines the legitimacy of our elected officials, erodes public trust in democracy, and fuels apathy and cynicism among the electorate. It creates an environment where violence and instability thrive, as those who feel cheated of their rightful victory may resort to extra-constitutional means to seek redress. To restore faith in our democracy, we must ensure that elections are free, fair, and credible. This requires strengthening our electoral institutions, reforming our electoral laws to enhance transparency and accountability, and engaging citizens in the electoral process. We must create a system where every vote counts and where the will of the people prevails.